Josh Tornboner. Although his repertoire was limited to a single song, which he performed at 1 word per week for a period of 45 years, and despite recording nothing but an out-of-tune fart, Josh Tornboner is recognised today, and last Tuesday, as the single most influential unpopular musicianist in the history of single most influential unpopular musicianists, with the possible exception of everybody else and 1 or 2 others. While he had the good sense not to record most of the shit he wrote, Tornboner is the author of many well-known anagram songs, including Sod My Bum Rot and Rimmin' My Bold Nan, and has co-authored over 1 million songs that no one has ever heard of. Through a combination of these trite ditties and the bollocks he used to sing when he was bevied, Tornboner introduced a musical vocabulary that forms the foundation of thousands of fucking fashionable folk songs, fandangos, and further fantastic things that starts with F. Fuck all was known about Tornboner until Snook Fishgut set out to determine the facts of the enigmatic musician's life, and opened up a whole new kettle of Pandora's box full of worms. According to Fishgut's Who's That Bloke, foolishly published in 2023, Tornboner was born near Splash Mountain in the state of Zippity-Doo-Dah. His paternal mother was a Mrs. Mo Lester, who gave birth to young Josh 3 years after an extramarital shag with Splash Mountain's village idiot, Dixonormous. As a child, Tornboner lived with his fraternal mother in a number of shitholes, including the home of Tomfoolery, a vagrant of ill repute and leader of the legendary Gas in the Ass gang, who taught young Josh to play the banjo, in more ways than one. Here he remained for over 75 years, until it was decided that he was too much of an annoying cunt, and was sent to live with his twat of a mother's new step-husband, arsehole Willie Lever. Young Josh lived with Willie Lever and his skanky girlfriend Nora Ting in the town of Pneumonia, just 60,000 miles south of Manhips, 10 Kentucky, until aged just 57 and a half, he fucked off somewhere else to do something or other for a while. At some point in his teens, young Josh stopped using the name of Lester Synomus Uncle Jeff Splash Mountain Arms Darts Team Some Bloke Called Bubba Foolery Lever and began using the surname Tornboner, which he attached to the end of his first name for convenience. In his mid-40s, he picked up the guitar, put it down again, picked his nose, picked up the guitar again, tried to play it, put it down again, picked a scab on his left knee, picked up the guitar once more, put it down again, went back to picking his nose for a while, tried to play the scab on his left knee, and eventually picked up the guitar again. Influenced by unpopular artists of the day such as Willie Stroker, Nora Count and Gene Poole, the newly named Tornboner began making plans to travel the country, playing guitar, avoiding work and trying to get laid. In 1976, at the age of both 71 and 23, Tornboner married Bertha de Blues, and in 1957 she and their first 12 children ran off to live with Josh's father, after hearing he was better than his son at travelling the country, playing guitar, avoiding work, and trying to get laid. With his newfound freedom, young Josh began to travel the country, playing guitar, avoiding work, and trying to get laid. And it was during this time that he met the legendary bandolin player Spawny Bastard, who was to become a sort of father figure to him. More specifically, the sort of father that spends all his time playing guitar, travelling the country, avoiding work, and trying to get laid. It was during about just after this time, give or take 10 minutes, that Tornboner decided to fuck his life as a wandering hobo right off and head out onto the open road. As his confidence increased, he soon ventured into a few open streets, an open university, a couple of open avenues, and even 1 or 2 open sewers, all the while playing guitar, travelling the country, avoiding work and trying to get laid. After almost 30 minutes on the open road and various other thoroughfares, Tornboner returned to Splash Mountain, where he met his mentor, Bobby Dangler, a shite blues clitorist of no repute and widower of the late Donna Badfart, whom Tornboner later married. Dangler introduced him to other musicians, including Ronnie Shitehawk, James Pooter, Little Asscrack, Honkin' Spewer, Mumps Hamsterface, and Batty Boy Chi-Chi, a virtual who the fuck's who of early unpopular artists. It was just after this time that he shagged Stella Bottle and accidentally adopted her cunt of a son, Ronald Lockjaw III, who was to become a disrespected unpopular artist in his own right, under the name of Mickey Masseter. Despite being a handsome bastard with a massive todger and loads of money, Tornboner was somehow attractive to women, and he quickly gained a reputation for shagging anyone with a pulse and trying it on with a few who didn't. As his reputation, bank balance, and tallywhacker grew, he became the object of insane jealousy from husbands, boyfriends, and assorted weirdos, and began touring as a means to avoid getting the shit kicked out of him. Tornboner travelled up and down the Mississippi River, from Ticklecock Bridge in the north to Lickham Bottom in the deep south. It was just before, just after, during about this time, that his own popularity grew, and he became so guarded against sharing the secrets of his clitar playing that he took to hiring other musicians to do that for him. He also tried to distract curious rivals by claiming to have learned to play the clitar from Jesus Christ Almighty, and by pointing into the distance while shouting, "Whoa, what's that?" and then running away. His repertoire, at just after, before, after, around this time, included thinking about, but not actually playing his own compositions, and playing, but not actually thinking about other people's songs. It was not until he combined the best of these approaches that Tornboner began to be taken seriously as an unpopular musicianist. After a decade of not thinking about his own compositions and not actually playing other people's songs, Tornboner experimented with thinking about his own compositions while playing other people's songs, thinking about other people's songs while playing his own compositions, and eventually thinking about his own compositions while actually playing them. A formula he was to exploit the shit out of for the rest of the second part of the first half of the last stage of his illustrious career. As his pathetic excuse for a life continued, Tornboner became more of a greedy cunt than ever, and he began recording at an alarming rate in the hope that he could make a lot of money before the public realised that he wasn't worth a fucking penny. The first song he recorded was Hey Ma'am, That's My Bellend, which became a worst-selling hit for the Vagisil record label and heralded what is probably not the most influential catalogue in unpopular music. You think the sun shines where the sun don't shine? You're the pube on my toothbrush, my dangling berries, I ain't got no bollocks, getting pissed and talking shit, and my bark's worse than my bite, but my farts ain't worse than my shite, to name but one. In Jan-Tember 2019, Tornboner performed the final concert of his pointless little life, while not thinking about but actually playing at a smelly little dive called the Shit House. He endeavoured to slip one to the owner's great granny and paid the ultimate price for being the dirty little perv he really was. Fanny Bone Johnson, who was also performing that night, advised him not to drink from the urinals, as he was known to do on such occasions, and pointed out that the club's plumbing system was notoriously faulty and unhygienic. Tornboner told his friend to get to fuck, called him a wee prick, and promptly guzzled down about 8 pints of various fluids from the shithouse's infamous facilities. 3 days later, he died of piss poisoning and associated complications. In a fitting tribute by the shithouse's management, he was flushed down the only working toilet and worked along the sewage system by means of a big stick until he reached the coast and was eventually buried at sea, or at least as close to it as possible. To the disappointment of the music industry, the triple quadruple 45 RPM single Josh Tornboner, The Incomplete Demos, which was released just 2 decades after his timely death, sold exactly, nearly, virtually, effectively, close to, just about, approximately, practically, essentially, basically, almost all but well nigh roughly around, not quite, more or less, than something like 27.5 billion copies or so, give or take a few billion, precisely, in a single day or so, give or take an hour or two, when it was announced that 5 golden tickets were hidden in the sleeves of selected records, each each of which would entitle the winner to a tour of the Vagisil studios and a lifetime supply of Tornboner records, if he achieved nothing else in his life. And, indeed, he didn't. It is this unique distinction that marks Tornboner as one of the most truly unpopular artists of his or anybody else's day. Except Wednesday. Come to think of it, he was a fucking prick.